Yo, what is good everybody? Welcome back to another video on Jujutsu Infinite, and today I am finally making my innate tier list for PvE because a lot of people have been asking me in the comments. At this point, I might as well just make a video on it to basically show you guys what I think is the best one for PvE. And I'm only doing a PvE tier list just because I have not touched this pad right here. PvP modes, I have not touched that since the beginning of the game, and I'm not even going to try until I max out the main game. And if you guys want to give your own insight or you have your own tier list, please leave a comment down below. And while you're down there, like, subscribe, and turn on the noties because it's all free and helps me out a ton. With that being said, we're gonna go ahead and start the tier list. So here we go. Okay, so here we are on the tier list, and a quick little disclaimer, I will be using the Trello to go back and forth to basically see what the abilities do on each innate technique that I'm not familiar with, and to show you guys a little graphic of what it does. And remember, this is a PvE tier list, so if you guys are commenting about PvP, you're cooked. All right, listen. Now, how I'm going to rank this is through letter grades, right? S tier being the best, E tier being the lowest in the category, and then who being who the fuck uses these innate techniques. You know what I'm talking about? Who uses Blazing Courage, bro? Who uses Blazing Courage? If you're poor and you started off with like one spin, I could understand it, but everybody had like over 200, 300, 400 spins. You could get better than that. So, yeah, let's just start with the who's. Let's start with the who's. So, Boogie Woogie, if you're using this for PvE, yo, congratulations, bro. You've been wasting your time. Construction, who uses that? Like, are we really being serious, guys? You shoot a gun, you shoot another gun, you have a sword, and you have a minigun. This minigun, I tried it. It looks cool. It would have been nice if it lasted a little longer. But yeah, it's absolute dog. It is absolute dog water. Cloning technique, guys. You might be thinking multiple people would go crazy in PvE, especially for bosses. Yeah, this is just gonna mess up your entire combo. Plus, they don't even do that much damage. So yeah, we'll keep these ones right here. They're not too bad. Straw doll. I mean, like, who uses this? It's a rare, but like, first technique, you shoot a nail, you could M1 with the nail, you hit your person with the hammer with the air combo, you strike him with a hammer, you strike him with the squishy hammer, you hit him with the bigger hammer, and you explode the nail. And it has a bunch of knockback. So yeah, that's not good for PvE. Like, there's not a lot of AoE moves on that, plus it doesn't do too much damage. So we'll keep on going. Let's see who else is getting put on the who tier. Yeah, bro. Tool manipulation. If you are using this in the big 2025, bro, you are getting cooked. I know this game didn't release for that long, but if you are using this at all, come on, guys, we're not being serious. You shoot a bunch of knives that could be dodged easily. Doesn't even have AoE. You have a broom where you have movement, but you're never going to use this in the game because you get teleported everywhere where you need to be. And then wind sight that knocks people back and launches you in the air and becomes really annoying. You want moves that are basically stationary, so that is getting put in the who section. Now, let's get started with the real techniques. Discord? Let's not disturb me, but yeah, let's get started with the real innate techniques that we're actually going to start ranking. So the first one that we have is blood manipulation. Honestly, if we take a look at blood manipulation, this is like DE tier, really low tier for PvE. Passive blood orbs that can explode on one enemy that's basically been building it up on, and what those orbs look like is just tiny balls, and you could explode them with supernova. But needing a move to explode that is not good because it takes up a slot. The mode, it just increases speed, so it's not even that great. Piercing blood, I guess it goes through multiple mobs, but the AoE is not massive. Bloodbind, I guess it could be good for bosses. All these moves are kind of PvP orientated. So yeah, this is going in like D, E tier. I'm gonna be a little harsh in this one. I'll put it in E tier because hopefully nobody's using this for PvE. The next one we have is Cursed Queen. Now, if you guys already don't have this, which I don't, can't really blame anyone else if they have bad luck, but this right here is definitely needed for a PvE build. If you want to rush bosses or even just kill a ton of mobs at the same time, especially for investigations, this is probably a S tier. I'm telling you, Cursed Queen is very much needed. But right now I'm gonna put it in S. Let's take a quick look at why Cursed Queen is actually good. So first of all, the move Ghastly Fist is the most insane ability inside the game for killing bosses. Like, they don't get knocked back, even though it shows this on here. That's a normal dummy, but bosses don't get knocked back. It's constant damage while you could use attacks with it, and it has a pretty decent AoE. Now, these other moves are not really that great. I guess the only other good one would be Energy Blast because it has decent wave clear. Also, Conjuration, the mode is really nice as well. If you don't have like Sukuna Switch or some form of mode like the soul manipulation one, this could be a good alternative. 25% increased defense, cooldown reduction, and speed, and 10% increase to damage. And then we have the domain expansion. I don't really find this that useful. You get more abilities, but there's definitely better domains out there. And then we have the move that honestly is probably the highlight of this build outside of Ghastly Fist, the maximum technique, Jacob's Ladder. When you obtain this maximum technique, you become the killer of all curses. Like, if you're doing investigations and you just have them all riled up in one area, you just blast the hell out of them and they just disappear. And even against bosses, like when they're low, they have like 10 to 5k HP, you just put this this on and they explode. First Queen is definitely up there with one of the best PvE innate techniques. If you get this, you are one lucky bastard, I tell you that. Now, Cryokinesis, not really that great. Ice Age has good AoE. Let me quickly pull it up. So right here, Ice Age is probably the best move for just AoE and curse damage, like actual normal curses. For bosses, Winter Lotus and Frost Impact could be nice since it's single target and it actually stuns them. Hailstorm is absolute dog. Now, I will say it's better than Blood Manipulation, so that's why I have it one tier above it. Now, Demon Vessel. Demon Vessel could be a S tier. Okay, I'm gonna put an S tier for right now, and we can run through the abilities and I'll make my decision by the end. So if you guys don't have a Demon Vessel, it is honestly one of the better and more useful innate techniques for just general use. Dismantle, this is similar to Ghastly Fist. You can just place it down and start attacking afterwards. Cleave, people are kind of underrating Cleave because it launches you into the air, but honestly, if you just spam E towards the mob that you're attacking, you don't get launched up and you do a decent amount of damage. Flaming Arrow is kind of dog, has a lot of knockback and it burns them, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. Switch, one of the best modes, if not the best mode in the game, that gives you 25% increased damage and defense. Like, this is insane for just blitzing bosses. I recommend getting Demon Vessel just for the mode. It is so useful. Now, here's one of the other things that makes Demon Vessel so good. Malevolent Shrine, the domain expansion. This is probably the best PvE domain out there just because of its AoE and the amount of damage it does towards curses. Like, if you just leave this in the background when you pop domain, it just does constant damage and it'll start building up. Now, the only downside to this is the cutscene is hella long, but if you don't find that annoying anymore, it is a really good domain. Plus, you get increased damage and defense, so why not? Now, for the maximum technique enchanting, it's not bad. It gives you pretty decent iframes because, of course, this mode has a cutscene and it takes pretty long. But the moves on it, I guess, is good for wave clear. It doesn't do insane amounts of damage, so I wouldn't really recommend getting this maximum technique. I'd rather have Jacob's Ladder, in my opinion, especially since if you're running Black Flash, chanting is not really for you because it'll use up Black Flash tokens. So I guess, which one would I find more useful? Honestly, for pure damage output, I'd probably put First Queen above it. But like the utility on Demon Vessel with mode and Malevolent Shrine, I'll keep it in A tier for now. I'll keep it in A tier and we can move it up if we ever decide to. Now, we have Gambler's Fever. I'm gonna put this in B tier. Now, Gambler's Fever is more like a fun innate technique to use than an actual serious innate technique. It is pretty nice for PvP, but for PvE, it's not that amazing. It can be replaced by other innate techniques. So Closing Curtains, nice close-up damage with no knockback or anything, and it's pretty instant, so good for boss damage. Pachinko Rush knocks them back really far and it doesn't do insane AoE. Cargo Haul, insane AoE, but knocks them insanely far. Rendevious, if that's how you pronounce it, I don't want to butcher it, but it summons 2 trains on top of your opponents, damaging them several times. This is actually really nice because it stuns the mob onto the floor while you're running a train on it. I could recommend that for bosses. Slot Slam, recommend that for bosses because it gets them stuck and plants the machine on top of them. And then the domain expansion, it's good for a buff, I guess, but you have lower defense, and the only reason why you'd use this is for the fever mode after it. For PvE, the fever mode isn't really that amazing just because it's like after the domain expansion. So if you're trying to blitz bosses, this might not be the best domain for you. So that's why I'm putting it in B tier. Of course, I'd rather have Gambler's Fever than these two down here, so I'll keep that there. Now for Hydrokinesis, I'm probably just gonna put this right here on C. Now I haven't really used it. We could quickly check. Tsunami, let's see. Oh yeah, the passive is wet, makes the mobs deal less damage and they're a lot slower. So Tsunami, a decent AoE, puts the wet buff. Water Jet, honestly good pierce damage, good for AoE. Piranha Swarm, that one doesn't look too great because it has knockback and it's not that fast. It's like, it takes a long time to proc all the piranhas. Eelbind would probably be great for bosses. Death Swarm, this might be the best one for overall use because it's auto target, has good AoE, decent damage, and it procs the passive as well. And then the domain expansion, if you use Death Swarm while in this domain, it would affect everybody trapped inside the domain. So it basically, it makes the Death Swarm a lot stronger and it's auto target. If you guys heard that, that was my washing machine, my bad. And it also gives you a damage boost. So this domain is honestly not too bad. You know what? I definitely have this over Gamblers in my opinion, just because of the amount of moves you could actually use in this build. Honestly, Hydrokinesis is kind of underrated. Now for Infinity, I'm glazing the hell out of Infinity, guys. Come on. Infinity is definitely needed if you want to make a PvE build just because of a couple of moves, all right? Infinity doesn't have the best base kit, but there's a couple of moves in here that makes it S tier. So Reversal Red, good AoE. It doesn't proc that quickly, but just the wave clear on it is pretty insane, and it has a guard break. Last Blue isn't really that great. Spatial Plummet is horrible. Mugen is horrible just because it uses up all of your modes. So for example, if you had Demon Vessel mode, like Switch, but you pop Mugen, it'll put everything on a global cooldown. So you don't want this if you're using a mode that actually buffs your stats. Red Transmission, I guess it could be a gap closer against bosses, but not really the best against like waves of mobs. And now we have Hollow Purple. Hollow Purple is nuts. Hollow Purple is what what makes this S tier. Honestly, this skill alone probably puts it up there to S tier. So basically, if you don't know why it's so good, it's because the start time at the beginning gives you iframes. And you might be thinking, but you always tell us not to get moves that have a lot of start time. Well, for this one, it actually does damage. So even if it has start time, at least you're able to do damage afterwards. Like I've seen 4 to 10k damage depending on your build. And if you're wondering why iframes are so good, it's because you could dodge giant abilities, especially like, for example, Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine. You could just pop this here and you could dodge like 10 to 20% of the damage that you would have taken throughout the battle. I'm definitely taking Hollow Purple in my build. And then we also have the domain expansion. This one's not good. I don't recommend getting this as your domain for PvE. At least I could see PvP, but even then people could just vent. And then we have the maximum technique enchanting. This one's actually really nice. I could recommend getting this maximum technique because you get a buff for focus and cooldown reduction, plus your moves lapse blue and reversal red just become instant and do a ton of damage. And when you chant both of them at the same time, you create a hollow nuke which basically wipes out the entire map. Pretty good for investigation. So I could definitely put this up there. Would it be above Curse Queen? I could say so. Like the utility on Hollow Purple is just insane. It's just so good. Now Judgment. I have not touched Judgment at all in this entire game. Let's quickly check it out. So here it is. Scalpel Smash. Not that great of AoE, but good single target. Gravel Sweep. Good AoE, but doesn't do too much damage. Confiscation has a cutscene. You don't really want that on a normal move. Plus it scales on strength. So if you're going technique, this really isn't the best. Guillotine Execution, I guess, could be a good range move. Good for bosses if you're further away. Objection. I feel like you don't want to use counters because you just want to start killing bosses as fast as possible, and using a counter is not that useful if you know what the boss does. And then the domain expansion is not great for PvE because even if you get the Executioner Sword, not every run is going to be exactly like that. Because if you already don't know how this domain works, once you're inside the domain, you're going to play rock, paper, scissors with the NPC or player. You have a 66% chance of not getting the Executioner Sword because if you tie or lose, you don't get the sword. You just get these buffs right here. Would I say Judgment is better than Gambler's Fever? No. Yeah, I'm putting this in C tier. Now, Ratio. Oh, I am a Ratio glazer. I glaze the hell out of Ratio in this game, and honestly, it is definitely warranted. Like 7-3 strike and unwavering output is absolutely nuts for damage. This is 2 attacks at the same time. Does a ton of damage. I've seen it do 3-4k. 7-3 strike, when you use that with the chant Black Flash, basically you're applying Black Flash to 7-3 strike, you do a ton of damage. Plus it applies a 2-second debuff on whoever it hits, lowering the defense by 50% for Ratio technique moves. So if you use this first and then you're using unwavering output, your damage on single target is going to be through the roof. It has a decent AoE as well. So those 2 moves are nice. If you don't have a mode, you can use overtime, 25% speed, 15% more damage, and 15% reduced cooldown. So this could pair well with the Ratio skills. So Ratio, I'm just going to put it in A tier because the utility on the other ones are definitely a lot more useful, but the damage output on Ratio is most definitely needed for a PvE build, especially against bosses. Now, Soul Manipulation. This is gonna have to go at least B tier, high B. If you guys already don't know, Soul Manipulation really isn't that great for PvE. I could see PvP, but PvE is not amazing. Like the only good AoE move on here is Deformed Fist, and yeah, that is kind of it. All the other ones are mid as hell and only good for PvP. The mode is really nice though. 25 increased damage and speed. I'd say the Demon Vessel is better just because it gives defense instead of speed, but still 25 increased damage is great for blitzing bosses. And then the domain expansion gives you more transfiguration stacks, damage buff, defense buff, and a range increase on your moves, but you're not really going to be using any other moves outside from like Deformed Fist. Yeah, I mean, would I put it above Hydrokinesis? Honestly, I'm putting it right here. I'd still use Hydrokinesis domain. I'd use Water Jet. Like there's a ton of moves on Hydrokinesis that could be better than Soul Manipulation, especially for wave clear. And by the way, I'm only tiering them based on the innate technique alone. So maybe if you pair these up with each other, they could be better than what I'm saying. But for right now, this is where I'm going to put it at. Now, Curse Speech, who the hell is using that? Too much knockback. I should have put that on who? How did I not find that? All right, Star Rage, definitely S tier. S tier for probably the best innate technique for overall PvE. Like the AoE on it and the chanting, if you build a chant build with this, you are going nuts. Because every single ability on this set, I believe it has a chant variation, which if you don't know what a chant variation is, it just makes it stronger. Plus the domain expansion works well with the actual innate technique itself. When you're inside this, you have maxed out mass meter, allowing you to chant every single attack. You just need the tokens. Plus it increases your defense and your overall damage. But one of the best things outside of that is most definitely the maximum technique. Total Collapse, you summon a giant black hole that pulls everything around you inside this one area and just does a ton of damage. It is probably up there with Jacob's Ladder. I could recommend getting this if you are running Star Rage. Like this is insane. I don't know which one's better between the two. I'd probably say Jacob's Ladder, but honestly the utility on this by just pulling everything in one place and and your teammates being able to attack as well, the damage output would be insane. So Star Rage, definitely S tier, probably the best one in my opinion. Now we have Volcano. I'm gonna put this right here actually. I'm gonna put it above Ratio just because it has a lot more useful moves. Like I said, Ratio does a ton of damage to bosses and NPCs, but still Volcano a lot more useful in general. So let's run through Volcano really quickly, and that should be the end of the tier list. So Molten Palm, not that great. Ember Insects, not that great. Eruption, this is probably a move that you could run on your skill set because it does a ton of damage, does burning, and it has AoE. Now you can't use moves while it's actually summoned, but it has good range, so it doesn't really matter. Now for Molten Chamber, this is probably the highlight of the entire innate technique. Placing this on the floor and not even hitting the NPC with the first initial attack doesn't matter because the lava below it does an insane amount of damage, and with that many ticks your domain meter is going to be up. So really good for just passive damage on the floor, and it causes them to burn as well for a short duration. So I recommend running Molten Chamber. Fissure could be good for AoE, but not really that great for damage. The main expansion Coffin of the Iron Mountains, probably one of the better PvE domains out there because it causes everything inside to burn and you get increased damage and defense. It's kind of like a Walmart Sukuna. And then we have the maximum technique. So maximum meter, if you already haven't fought Jogo, like the move is instant, you throw it pretty quickly, huge AoE, and the damage is quick. So this could be a good alternative to the other maximum techniques outside from like Jacob's Ladder and the Black Hole. So that's why I'm placing Volcano at A. Now this is the tier list. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. But with that being said, I'll see you guys later. Peace.